Part 1. Daniel had learned how to move through the city like a ghost, eyes forward, shoulders slightly hunched, mind always calculating the next hour, the next bill, the next small disaster he might or might not be able to outrun. Being a single dad didn't leave room for softness. It left room for efficiency. That afternoon, the cold had a bitter edge, the kind that slipped under coats and into bones, and Daniel was already tired from a double shift at the warehouse when he picked up Noah from daycare. Noah was 5, curious about everything, asking questions that sometimes made Daniel smile and sometimes made his chest ache, especially when they drifted too close to the topic of mom, a word Daniel had learned to answer with gentle vagueness and quick distractions. They walked toward the subway, grocery bags cutting into Daniel's fingers, the city roaring around them with horns, footsteps, snippets of conversation. Near the entrance, a beggar sat on the ground, wrapped in layers that looked scavenged rather than chosen, hair tangled, face hidden behind a scarf that had once been red. Daniel saw her the way he saw puddles or cracks in the sidewalk, briefly, vaguely, without intention. He tightened his grip on Noah's hand and kept walking, telling himself he didn't have spare change, didn't have spare energy, didn't have space in his heart to carry another stranger's pain. He had learned that lesson the hard way after Emily vanished from his life 5 years ago, after the accident by the river, after the police reports and the condolences and the long nights holding a newborn who cried for a mother who would never come home. Survival had taught him to keep moving. Then Noah slowed. Daniel felt it immediately, that subtle resistance in their joined hands. "Come on, buddy," he said automatically, a note of impatience creeping in. But Noah stopped completely, his small body going rigid, his hand slipping free. Daniel turned, irritation ready on his tongue, but it died there. Noah was staring at the woman on the ground with an intensity that made Daniel's skin prickle. The boy's lips parted as if he wanted to speak but didn't know how, his eyes filling with tears that confused him as much as they alarmed his father. "No," Daniel said, softer now. Noah swallowed hard, then looked up at Daniel with an expression no 5-year-old should have to wear, recognition mixed with fear and fragile hope. "Dad," he said, his voice barely more than a breath, "that's Mom." Daniel felt the words hit him physically, like a shove to the chest. His first reaction was denial, sharp and immediate, a reflex honed by grief. "No, no," he said too quickly, forcing a laugh that sounded wrong even to his own ears. "Your mom," he stopped. The woman had lifted her head. Slowly, as if afraid of what she might see, she pulled the scarf down from her mouth. Her face was thinner than he remembered, etched with hardship, but the shape of it, the eyes, the slight scar near her left eyebrow from when they were in college and she'd tripped on broken pavement, it was her. Emily. The world seemed to narrow to that single point, the past crashing violently into the present. Memories surged uninvited, Emily laughing in their tiny kitchen, Emily asleep on the couch with a book on her chest, Emily in the hospital bed after giving birth, exhausted and glowing, whispering that she loved him. Daniel's knees weakened. His mind screamed that this was impossible, that he had buried her, mourned her, built a life around her absence. Emily stared at him as if he were an illusion, her eyes wide, her lips trembling. For a long second, none of them moved. The city flowed around them, indifferent. And then Emily's gaze dropped to Noah, and something inside her shattered. A sound escaped her, half sob, half gasp, as she reached out and then froze, fingers hovering in the air, unsure, afraid. Daniel realized he was shaking. He realized he was still standing. He realized his son had been right. Part 2. He dropped the grocery bags and knelt, the cold seeping through his jeans, the concrete hard and real beneath him, grounding him in a moment that felt unreal. Emily, he said, her name tasting strange and familiar all at once, like a word from another lifetime. Her face crumpled, and she nodded, tears spilling freely now. Danny, she whispered, and the way she said it like an apology, like a confession, undid him. Nov took a tentative step forward, then another, his small hand reaching out to touch Emily's sleeve as if to make sure she existed. When she flinched, he pulled back, heart flashing across his face. "It's okay," Daniel heard himself say, though he wasn't sure who he was reassuring. Emily looked at Nov, really looked at him, tracing his features with her eyes, the curve of his nose so much like Daniel's, the dimple she recognized from her own childhood photos. "I'm sorry," she whispered again, to both of them, to the years she had lost. Nov didn't need explanations. He wrapped his arms around her neck with the fearless certainty of a child who knew, somehow, that this was where he belonged. Emily broke completely then, clutching him as if the world might steal him away if she loosened her grip, her sobs loud and raw. Daniel swallowed hard, his vision blurring, and pulled off his jacket to drape it over her shoulders, an instinct older than reason. They sat there like that for a long time, drawing curious glances, but Daniel no longer cared. Between tears, Emily told her story in fragments: the accident by the river, being pulled from the water by a stranger, waking up in a hospital with no memory, months lost in confusion, drifting through shelters, flashes of a life she couldn't quite grasp. She spoke of trying to remember, of knowing something was missing, of seeing families and feeling a hollow ache she couldn't name. Daniel listened, anger and sorrow and relief tangling inside him, realizing how close he had come to a life without this moment. Eventually, he helped her to her feet, steadying her as if she were learning to stand for the first time. Nov clung to her hand, refusing to let go. As they walked home together, slowly, awkwardly, Daniel felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest, not certainty, not closure, but possibility. He knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be questions, pain, rebuilding trust one fragile step at a time. But as Nov skipped between them, swinging their hands, laughing through leftover tears, Daniel understood that sometimes the most important thing a person can do is stop, look back, and let the past catch up.